can you tell me how we can handle keyboard navigation better for clickable elements?
Sure, let me show you a YouTube video on the topic.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on this channel. So today we are covering a topic on accessibility. Like the most basic thing in accessibility requirements is to handle keyboard navigation properly. So in today's video we are going to make sure that clickable elements that we have in our React app, they have proper keyboard navigation. Now to illustrate this problem, let me just open a page and let's just say you want to make a clickable button. Now there are two ways in which we generally make clickable elements in React. So let me just jump to keyboard navigation. First is we use a button and second is we sometimes use a div. So in some cases what we do is we generally go with a button element. We have an on-click handler and we use some text within it, and we have a handle click method to handle the click functionality. In this case I am just logging some output to the console as my click handler. So one way in which we can create clickable element is to directly go with a button. Now the advantage of using a button is twofold. First is when the user is trying to navigate the website using just the keyboard instead of mouse. So when we type the tab key, you can see that the button gets into the focus automatically when we type tab. So in this case, the element is getting focused directly. That's the first advantage of using a button. Second thing is if the user clicks the enter key or types the space key, the button click events get triggered automatically. So accessibility requirements within the native HTML elements are well handled, which is why it is always recommended that you use the native HTML elements for the roles that you are defining them for as far as possible. What I mean by that is if you are having a clickable element in your code, the most basic or the most easiest way to handle accessibility is to use the native button element itself. But there are cases where sometimes using a button might not be possible for a clickable elements. Now, there are a lot of examples for this which we'll cover in some time. So let's just say you create a div and you have an on-click method in which you have a handle click method, and in this handle click method you are again logging some message. Now most of us generally write this much amount of code and they move on to the other aspects of feature development. Now the problem that happens is if you go to the browser and if you hit tab here, the first thing that gets focused is the button. But if I click tab again, as you can see, the focus shifted to the address bar instead of being getting focused to this element. So this is the first red flag that we have, that is our button is not accessible using tab key or using keyboard navigation. So what we can do is, first thing that we can add is the tab index. So if I set tab index to let's just say 0 and hit save, then when I hit the tab key, as you can see, the element is now getting focused using the tab key. So that's the first thing that we can do to make the div element a little more accessible, which is to have a tab index. Now the next thing that we do is if we press the enter key or if I press the space key, then the log is not getting printed. That is, the key down event or the keypress events are not handled natively on this clickable element because we haven't added any specific functions that needs to be added to handle the enter key press or space key press, which doesn't allow it to act as a clickable element. So one thing that we can do is, in order to make this div elements accessible, we can first set the tab index to 0. The second thing that we can do is we can set the role to button to let the screen reader know that this is a clickable element or this is element which is acting as a button. And most importantly, we can have a on key down event. On key down event is the event which gets triggered when a particular key is pressed on the keyboard. Every key that is pressed, the event gets triggered. In this on key down event, what we can do is we can have a handle keypress method. And in this keypress method, if we detect that enter key is pressed or the space key is pressed, then we can have the same functionality that we had in the handle click method as well. Now if I go back to the browser and if I hit space or if I hit the enter key, as you can see, the accessible div clicked log is getting printed, which is specifying that, okay, this element is now getting clicked. Now this is the most basic thing that we can do to address the accessibility requirements. So whenever we are using any non-native element which is playing the role of a native element like button, for example, if you are using a div which is playing the role of a button, then make sure to have a tab index first of all, have a role which is specifying the, let's just say, button or some clickable elements. And in addition to on click, always make sure to have an on key down event so that the enter or space key is handled. Now, what are the use cases where this is required? Let me just go to the app.jsx and comment out card elements. Now let's just say you have a card grid, and in this card grid you have some video thumbnail, some video description, and you want the user to click on this element. And when the user clicks on these elements, let's just say you want the user to be redirected to the actual video, which is the like a common use case you have for YouTube videos where you have a thumbnail grid, and when you click on any of the thumbnail, the user is getting redirected to the video itself. In that case, you don't have a button here, but the entire element is itself clickable. Now, in such cases, this is a composite element, which is a combination of an image and a description, and it is acting as a clickable element, right? In that case, instead of button, it makes sense to use a div. But what we can do is, whenever we are like using this as a div, we generally what we do is we just have an on-click method, and in that on-click method, we are like handling the card click element, in which we handle some method, and we move on. The additional thing that we can do here as well is we can have a tab index, just like I mentioned. We can have a role, and we can have a on key down event here as well in such composite elements, which are, for example, having img and p tag, or they are clickable in some way. So what this does is it allows the user to like access these elements using tab. As you can see, the elements are getting focused, and when the user clicks the element using enter key or space key, as you can see, the console is getting printed out and the click element is getting triggered. So this is the most basic thing that you can do to handle keyboard navigation in much more better way in the clickable elements in React for accessibility requirements. In the future videos, I will cover much more detailed and other topics related to accessibility as well. So if you found this video useful, then hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more such content. And yeah, that's it from my end for today. Thank you and have a nice day. Goodbye.
Remember, a click without a key press is like a door without a handle. It's pretty frustrating. Share, comment, and follow for more such content.